Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening from Dishing, where I'm going to talk a little bit about something I keep talking about, I'll be talking about, which is getting rid of the seed starting potting soil and start using the real stuff and how I'm going to make it work for me. So, with that said, let's go. So, if you guys remember this year when I was doing my seed starting course, we used this Miracle Grow indoor potting mix that's for seed starting specifically. And I showed off some of the great attributes of this soil and how it is actually perfect for seed starting. But one of the things that happened, if you guys remember, was some of the plants I used this on started dying from the lack of nutrition, which is one of the hallmark traits of seed starting mix. So this episode, we're going to talk about the observations that I had and what I'm doing to use a regular potting mixer that I got from Costco, also Miracle Grow, organic, and then go into a little bit of the science of it and other things that you can look at from university extension websites. So with that said, here we go. All right, guys, so to remind you guys a little bit about all these seed starting soil mix. One of the things about them is that they're extremely fine, low nutrition, and it's really designed for basically giving your seedlings less chance of getting disease from the lower nutrition. Also very draining so that you don't have any drowning root rot. Because remember how I was talking about with germination and everything, you need air, water, and temperature. So this is going to make sure that at least the air and water part is balanced and has a lot of good drainage. So the problem with this, as I was getting into, as alluded to, was the nutrition profile is pretty low. So what ends up happening was when I was going through my germination process, actually with the plants, once they start getting bigger, after about a week or so, when you start seeing true leaf come up, I didn't feed it fast enough and they start dying. And the whole fertilizing process starts becoming pretty tiresome. And this is actually extremely hard situation for people who are trying to go organic, in that organic nutrition doesn't feed as fast. So making this extremely hard to work with. And so to combat that, I will talk about a process of which I'm going to basically use for this potting soil to make it work. Because potting soil in general, they come with about 3 to 6 months of nutrition, which is exactly perfect because that's about how long you will have to keep seedlings indoors before you transplant them outdoors into real soil. So that way, once you plant it in there and you get it starting in potting soil, you don't have to feed it at all until it's time to go out. So that way, if you're going to try to do anything organic, this basically gives you an organic way of being able to get it from indoor to outdoor without having to essentially do a lot of guesswork. So the process of which I'm going to use to replace a seed starting mix is I'm going to get myself, as I mentioned, regular potting soil. And I'm actually going to have these soil sifters. I got these on Amazon. So I got 2 millimeter, 4 millimeter, and 6 millimeter sift that'll be able to filter out large chunks. And then I'm going to have a container here, which I think this might actually be a little bit too narrow. I'll be able to drain the soil into, so that whatever doesn't go through this, whatever goes through the sift, can come right in here. And so the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to actually, so I have quite a bit of choice here, and in reality depends on how big your seeds are, which is going to determine how big a chunk they can really handle. So 2 millimeter here is probably going to be the ideal size for sifting if you're going to be using tiny seeds, or 4 millimeter if it's regular or jumbo size seeds like pumpkin and stuff. These 6 millimeter are probably going to be just enough. The idea is to get massive tree chunks out of there, which I know a lot of people complain about, but those are actually the material you will need for better drainage without adding perlite or other type of material in there. So those are actually useful for other uses. So don't throw that away. Keep it in the bag. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to handle sifting with these baskets right here, sifting basket. All right, so to remind everyone a little bit about how these soil differ, So let's look at this seed starting mix. As you can see, it's very fine. There's really no big particles. Everything is super fine here. It's quite moist. And here, if you look at the regular potting soil, you'll notice that there's significantly bigger chunks in here. Like see this twig right here. And then there's other bigger chunks like these here. These are, not small. And these are for drainage for the mature plants that you want to be planting in here. But in reality, these things will be a problem for even drainage and even contact for seeds when they are young. So you really want to filter this to make it become more like the seed starting soil. So that's what we're going to do right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take essentially these 2 millimeter sift, and what we're going to do is we're going to put some on here, and then we're going to put this bucket underneath, and then we're going to just basically strain. And of course, we can do a little better job with getting a bigger, more wider bucket. But as you can see, it's basically keeping the big chunks from going down. And it's not much here, but as you can see, the final result here of the mix is nothing but the finest soil. Kind of like what you saw with the seed starting mix. See how fine it is? That is perfect for seed starting. All right, guys. So now that you guys understand a little bit of how I have attempted to solve the problem of seed starting mix using potting soil with this bucket of filtered soil. Let's talk a little bit of why seed starting soil was actually first came about. So one of the things that, according to University Extension web documentation, is that it's meant to be reducing nutrition, so that there's going to be less pathogen and possibility of disease. Another thing that happens is that you see how fine the soil is, which I have solved with the soil sifter, is that you want to make sure there's even contact of soil and water to the seeds, so that the seeds have a consistent moisture to be able to germinate properly and be able to get the water it needs. And lastly, of course, the thing is that it's good draining and there's not enough air to go through. So yes, I didn't quite exactly solve that by adding peat moss, whatever these guys are using here. But the reality is that if you let the soil dry out enough, you shouldn't have that issue at all. And even for seed contact, one of the things that if you've watched my tiny seed episode, which I'll link right there, the tiny seed episode actually really solves the moisture contact problem completely by using vermiculite to really take care of that. So either way, from my seed starting course and also this filter, it essentially handles all the problem except for pathogen. But pathogen, if you let the soil dry out enough, it'll by itself actually solve that air problem. Also, to basically conclude everything here, I also linked a few university extension sites down below in the description, which will tell you what they actually think about what you need for actual starting seed mix. And a lot of them are interesting, right? I mean, a lot of them are exactly what you'd expect from what I mentioned with the things I talk about, but some of them actually talk about adding actual soil from your ground, which I think is actually novel. I don't quite understand it. If you kind of get the idea, please comment below and let's talk about it. But there's quite a few other observations down there. So I hope this episode gives you an idea of how moving forward in the future with seed starting, as opposed to using a seed starting mix, which should save me a little money. And also, actually, up to this point, a lot of the flowers I germinated, I didn't even do sifting. I just put the seeds right in there and they germinated just fine. You saw the results. It worked out fine. But make sure you get the watering cycle correct so the soil dries out. So I hope that really give you guys a little bit of a definitive answer on how I'm going to do my seed starting move forward. So until next time, guys, keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go.